I didn't rise from an obscure Corsican artillery officer to Emperor of the French by doubting myself. Indecision? That was a luxury my enemies couldn't afford, and neither can you. In a world clouded by hesitation, the man, or woman, who decides swiftly and acts boldly always commands the field. Confidence isn't some gift of fate, it's a strategy. It's built like a fortress, stone by stone, decision by decision. I'll show you how I did it. Because let me be clear, every battlefield, every council chamber, every moment of your life demands this: clarity, speed, resolve. I made decisions that shaped nations. But you're facing battles of your own, career crossroads, family dilemmas, moments where you must move or be moved. Today, I'll give you the exact mindset I used to command armies and crush doubt. Step by step, you'll learn how to assess risk like a general, trust your instincts like an emperor, and move like lightning while the rest of the world is stuck thinking. So, stay with me, and if you want to keep leveling up with strategies forged in fire and battle-tested by history, then subscribe to this channel right now. Let's sharpen your decision-making edge together. Picture yourself standing at the gates of your first real challenge, the weight of command pressing down on your shoulders like a heavy cloak. That was me at Toulon in 1793, a young artillery officer facing a British-held fortress that every other commander had deemed impregnable. In that moment, I learned the first and most vital lesson about decision-making. Indecision kills more men than bullets ever will. While other generals debated strategies and waited for perfect conditions, I saw something they didn't. Not because I was smarter, but because I was looking while they were talking. You see, there was this small promontory, L'Aiguillette. Everyone else saw an insignificant patch of land. I saw the key to breaking British control of the harbor. While committees discussed and debated, I made my decision. One decisive point, one concentrated attack, no hesitation. Think about your own life right now. How many opportunities are slipping through your fingers while you gather yet another? Opinion? How many victories are dying in the womb of hesitation? This isn't about recklessness, it's about recognition. Recognition that in any situation there is always a decisive point where action becomes imperative. The rain was pouring that December night when we took L'Aiguillette. My boots were soaked with mud, my uniform drenched, but my mind crystal clear. Because when you commit to a decision, truly commit, the physical discomforts fade into insignificance. The British never expected an attack in such conditions. Their comfort became their weakness. Let me be very clear about something. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about recognizing that your fear of action is often more dangerous than action itself. At Toulon, I wasn't fearless. I was focused. There's a crucial difference. I lost good men that night. Every commander does. But you know what killed more men throughout history? Generals who couldn't decide. Leaders who waited for certainty. That never came. In your life, indecision is bleeding you dry, in small ways. That relationship you won't define, that career move you keep postponing, that confrontation you keep avoiding. When I gave the order to advance on L'Aiguillette, I was a young officer gambling his entire future on one decision. The difference between a good leader and a great one isn't knowledge. It's the willingness to act on that knowledge, to step forward when others step back, to decide when others debate. Here's what you need to understand. The universe rewards decisive action, not because it's always right, but because it generates momentum. When I took that fort, it wasn't just a military victory. It was a statement. It said, here's a man who makes decisions while others make excuses. You want to know the real secret of that first command? The moment I committed to the decision, everything became simpler. The fog of uncertainty lifted, not because the situation changed, but because I changed. I was no longer an officer weighing options. I was a commander executing a plan. Remember this. In the time you spend worrying about making the wrong decision, you could have made the right one and dealt with any consequences. At Toulon, I didn't have the luxury of certainty, neither do you. What you do have is the same thing I had, the power to decide. This isn't just military strategy. This is life strategy. Every day you wake up on your own personal battlefield. Every challenge you face is your own personal Toulon. And just like that young artillery officer in the rain, you have a choice. You can spend your time explaining why you can't, or you can step forward and show everyone why you can. The siege of Toulon made my reputation, not because I was perfect, but because I was decisive. In a world paralyzed by options, the decision-maker becomes the leader by default. Remember that. Burn it into your mind, because your life's greatest victories are waiting on the other side of decisiveness. Do you know what I saw when I gazed across the Alps in 1800? Not perfect conditions. I saw ice, snow, and terrain that every military expert deemed impassable. But while others waited for spring, I saw opportunity. Because here's a truth that shaped empires. The perfect moment is a myth that keeps the mediocre mediocre. Let me take you there. Imagine standing at the foot of the Alps, 40,000 men looking to you for direction. The conventional wisdom screams, wait. Wait for better weather. Wait for clearer paths. Wait for spring. But waiting is just another word for surrendering to circumstances. You're doing this right now, aren't you? Waiting for the perfect moment to start that business. Waiting for the ideal time to have that crucial conversation. Waiting for conditions that will never come. And while you wait, life moves on without you. When I ordered the army to cross the Alps, my generals thought I was mad. Impossible, they said. But impossibility often lies not in the task itself, but in our reluctance to begin. We crossed those mountains not because conditions were perfect, but because our resolve was stronger than the conditions. Here's what you need to understand about perfect conditions. They're a comfort blanket for the timid. In your life right now, there are mountains you think you can't cross. Challenges that seem to demand perfect timing. But let me tell you what, I learned on those icy slopes. The best condition for success is the decision to start. We lost men in that crossing. We lost cannons and horses. But you know what we gained? The element of surprise. While the Austrians waited comfortably for spring, expecting us to do the same, we descended into Italy like a thunderbolt. Because sometimes the worst conditions create the best opportunities. Think about this. Every moment you spend waiting for perfect conditions is a moment your competitors, your rivals, your enemies can use to prepare. In business, in love, in life, while you wait for the perfect moment, someone else is creating it. I've commanded armies in scorching heat and bitter cold. I've made decisions in victory and defeat, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Conditions are never perfect. They're either good enough or they're excuses. Let me share a secret of command. The perfect plan executed today will achieve more than the ideal plan executed tomorrow. When I crossed the Alps, our plan wasn't perfect, but it was actionable, and more importantly, it was in motion. You're facing your own Alps right now, that career transition you're considering, that relationship you need to either deepen or end, that project you've been planning forever. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. They don't exist. Instead, ask yourself this: what's the smallest step I can take today? When we crossed the Alps, we didn't do it in one giant leap. We did it step by step, each one taking us closer to our goal. Your challenges are no different. Here's another truth from the battlefield. Momentum creates its own opportunities. Once we started moving across those mountains, we found paths we couldn't see from the bottom. Solutions emerged that no amount of planning could have revealed. But first, we had to move. The conditions you're waiting for are often created by the very act of beginning. Think about that. Really let it sink in. The perfect moment isn't coming. It's created by those bold enough to begin before they feel ready. Remember this: in the time you spend waiting for perfect conditions, you could have already adapted to imperfect ones, while others wait for spring. Make winter your ally. While others seek comfort, find strength in discomfort, because ultimately, This is what separates leaders from followers, victors from the defeated. The willingness to act in imperfect conditions. To take that first step when the path isn't clear. To start before you feel ready, so stop waiting. Your personal Alps await. And like those mountains I crossed, they care nothing for your timeline or your comfort. They care only for your courage to begin. Let me tell you something about confidence that most people never understand. It's not a feeling. It's a calculation. When I stood before kings and emperors, my confidence wasn't born from emotion. It was forged through preparation and strategic thinking. You see, most people wait to feel confident before they act. They treat confidence like some mystical force that either descends upon you or doesn't. This is why they fail. This is why they remain frozen while others advance. I want you to understand something fundamental. Every time I entered a room, whether it was the halls of the Tuileries Palace or a war council before battle, my confidence came from knowing I had done the work. I had studied the maps I had run through the scenarios. I had calculated the risks. Think about how you approach your challenges right now. Are you waiting to feel confident, or are you building confidence through preparation? There's a crucial difference between these two approaches. One leaves you at the mercy of emotions, the other puts you in command of them. When I faced the combined armies of Austria and Russia at Austerlitz, my confidence wasn't emotional. It was mathematical. I knew the terrain. I had measured the distances. I had calculated the time it would take for each division to move into position. This is how real confidence is built, through meticulous preparation and clear-eyed assessment. Here's what you need to understand about true confidence. It's built like a fortress, stone by stone, calculation by calculation. When I made decisions that shaped empires, it wasn't because I felt invincible. It was because I had done the work to know my position was strong. Let me give you a framework I used. Before any major decision, I would ask myself 3 questions. First, what do I know for certain? Second, what can I reasonably assume? Third, what must I be prepared for, regardless of certainty? This isn't just military strategy. This is how you build unshakable confidence in any arena you're facing. Your own battles right now. Maybe it's a career decision. Maybe it's a personal challenge. Stop waiting to feel confident. Start calculating your position. What resources do you have? What intelligence have you gathered? What preparations have you made? Remember this, emotion is fleeting, but calculation is constant. When I planned the Egyptian campaign, my confidence didn't come from feeling lucky. It came from understanding the Mediterranean naval routes, studying the terrain of the Nile Delta, and calculating the logistics of moving an army through desert conditions. Here's another truth about confidence. It's not about eliminating uncertainty, it's about preparing for it. When I entered Moscow in 1812, I was confident not because I was certain of victory, but because I had calculated and prepared for multiple scenarios. True confidence isn't the absence of doubt, it's the presence of preparation. Your confidence must be built on this same foundation. Stop treating it like a mood that comes and goes. Start treating it like a fortress you build through knowledge, preparation, and strategic thinking. Every piece of information you gather, every scenario you plan for, every calculation you make, these are the stones of your fortress. Let me be very clear about something. The most confident person in the room isn't the one who feels no fear. It's the one who has done the most thorough preparation. When I negotiated with Tsar Alexander at Tilsit, my confidence came from knowing every detail of our relative positions, every potential outcome, every leverage point available. This is how you must approach your own challenges. Don't wait for confidence to arrive like some divine inspiration. Build it through systematic preparation. Know your terrain. Calculate your resources. Understand your position. This is how you develop the kind of confidence that others can sense, because it's real, it's earned, and it's unshakable. Remember, emotion-based confidence is like a candle in the wind, vulnerable to every gust of circumstance. But calculated confidence? That's like the foundation of a fortress. Solid, dependable, built to last. Which would you rather rely on when facing your own battles? The choice is yours. But know this, the world belongs to those who build their confidence on the bedrock of preparation, not the shifting sands of emotion. Now start calculating. Your empire awaits. Let me tell you about the morning of Austerlitz. My scouts had been bringing me reports all night, enemy positions, troop movements, terrain conditions, but here's what separated me from other commanders. I wasn't gathering information for comfort. I was gathering it for timing. You see, most people use information as a shield against action. They keep accumulating data, reports, opinions, thinking that more information will somehow make the decision easier. But let me tell you something I learned on countless battlefields. Information has an expiration date. Think about your own life right now. How many decisions are you postponing because you're gathering more information? How many opportunities are slipping away while you seek that one final piece of data that will make everything certain? This is what I call the paralysis of analysis. When I received intelligence about enemy movements, I had a strict rule. Information must lead to action within hours, sometimes minutes. Because here's a truth from the battlefield that applies to every arena of life. The value of information decreases with time. Let me give you a framework I used. For every piece of information that crosses your desk, ask yourself 3 questions. First, does this change what I already know? Second, does this create an opportunity? Third, does this reveal a threat? If the answer to any of these is yes, you must act. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, you're probably thinking, but Napoleon, what if I make a mistake? What if I don't have all the information? Let me tell you something about information. You will never have all of it. Never. Even as Emperor of France with spies and scouts across Europe, I never had complete information. The key isn't having all the information. It's knowing when you have enough. Here's what separates great decision makers from mediocre ones. They understand that timing often matters more than completeness. When I launched my campaign against Austria in 1805, I didn't wait for perfect intelligence. I acted on the information I had, because I knew that speed of action would create its own advantages. Think about the decisions you're facing right now. How much information do you really need? More importantly, how much time do you think you have? Because here's another battlefield truth. While you're waiting for perfect information, your competitors are acting on good enough information. Let me tell you about a technique I used, the information threshold. Before any campaign, I would determine in advance how much intelligence I needed to act. Not to be certain, to act. This prevented the endless loop of seeking one more report, one more confirmation, one more opinion. You must establish your own information thresholds. Whether it's in business, relationships, or personal decisions, decide in advance what you need to know to move forward. Because if you don't, you'll fall into the trap that has paralyzed so many, the endless search for certainty. Here's another crucial point. Information gathering should never become an excuse for inaction. I've seen generals with perfect intelligence lose battles because they waited too long to use it. I've seen opportunities slip away because someone wanted to be completely certain before acting. Remember this, in the time you spend seeking perfect information, the situation itself can change. The intelligence you gathered becomes outdated. The opportunity disappears. The threat materializes. This is why speed of action is often more valuable than completeness of information. When I made decisions that shaped empires, I wasn't working with perfect information. I was working with sufficient information, acted upon swiftly. This is the balance you must strike in your own life, gathering enough intelligence to act decisively, but not so much that the moment passes. Let me be very clear about something. This isn't about being reckless. It's about understanding that information has a shelf life. Intelligence goes stale. Opportunities expire. The world moves on while you're still gathering data. So here's your challenge. Look at the decisions you're postponing right now. How much information do you really need? More importantly, how much time do you really have? Because in the end, it's not the quality of your information that determines your success. It's the speed and decisiveness with which you act upon it. Remember, information is power, but only if you act fast enough to use it. Otherwise, it's just knowledge of what might have been. Let me tell you about instinct. Not the romantic notion of gut feeling that people love to glorify, but the real thing. The razor-sharp weapon I forged through thousands of decisions and countless battles. Your instinct isn't some mystical force. It's the lightning-fast calculation of experience, and I'm going to teach you how to sharpen it. When I ordered the cavalry charge at Marengo, everyone thought it was intuition. They were wrong. It was pattern recognition, refined through years of combat and command. Your instincts are no different. They're not magic. They're memory. Every experience, every decision, every outcome is being recorded, whether you realize it or not. Think about the decisions you make every day. Each one leaves a trace, an imprint on your mind. But here's what separates great decision makers from average ones. They don't just accumulate experiences, they study them. They extract lessons. They build a library of patterns in their mind. When I was a young officer, I spent hours studying military history, not just reading, analyzing. Every battle, every campaign, every victory, every defeat became part of my mental database. This isn't just military strategy. This is how you build instinct in any field. You must study your victories and your defeats with equal intensity. Here's what most people get wrong about instinct. They think it's about feeling. It's not. It's about recognition. When I made split-second decisions on the battlefield, I wasn't guessing. I was recognizing patterns I'd seen before, either in my own experiences or in my studies. Your instincts can do the same, but only if you train them. Let me give you a framework I used. After every major decision, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what patterns led to this moment? Second, what signals did I notice? Third, what signals did I miss? This isn't just reflection, it's deliberate instinct building. You see, your mind is constantly processing information, far more than you can consciously analyze in the moment. When you train your instincts properly, you're teaching your mind which patterns matter, which signals to prioritize. This is how you develop what others will call intuition, but what you'll know is trained judgment. Think about the last time you had a gut feeling about something. Now, instead of dismissing it as intuition, break it down. What were the subtle signals you noticed? What past experiences were informing that feeling? This is how you transform vague instincts into reliable judgment. When I faced Archduke Charles at Wagram, my orders seemed to come from instinct, but each command was based on thousands of hours of study and experience. Your instincts in your field, whether it's business, relationships, or any other arena, must be built the same way. Through study, through analysis, through deliberate practice. Here's another truth about instinct. It gets sharper with use, but only if you use it correctly. Each decision must be followed by analysis. Each outcome must be studied. You're not just making decisions. You're building a database of patterns that your mind can access instantly when needed. Remember this, in the heat of battle, there's no time for lengthy analysis. The same is true in many of life's crucial moments. This is why you must train your instincts now, in calmer times. Build that database of experiences. Study those patterns. Sharpen that recognition. Let me be very clear about something. Trusting your instincts doesn't mean abandoning analysis. It means training your mind to analyze faster, to recognize patterns more quickly, to make connections that others miss. This is how you develop the kind of instinct that others will marvel at. When I made decisions that changed the course of history, it wasn't because I had better feelings. It was because I had better pattern recognition. I had trained my instincts through relentless study and analysis. You must do the same in your field. Think about the decisions you'll face tomorrow. Your instincts will speak to you. but will they speak with the authority of trained judgment or the uncertainty of untested feeling? The difference lies in how you prepare today. Remember, your instinct is a weapon. Like any weapon, its effectiveness depends on how well you've maintained it, how often you've trained with it, how deeply you understand it. Don't wait for your instincts to guide you. Train them to serve you. This is how you develop the kind of instinct that others will call genius, not through magic, but through method, not through feeling, but through study. Your instinct is waiting to be sharpened. The only question is, are you ready to do the work? When I crossed the Alps with my army, I didn't leave an escape route. This wasn't recklessness. It was strategy. Because here's a truth I learned through countless campaigns. The presence of a backup plan often becomes the reason you need one. Let me show you why eliminating retreat makes you unstoppable. Think about the decisions you're facing right now. How many backup plans do you have? How many safety nets have you woven? Now, let me ask you something more important. How many of those backup plans are actually holding you back from fully committing to your primary goal? You see, when I launched the Italian campaign, my soldiers knew there was only one direction to move, forward. Not because I was cruel, but because I understood something fundamental about human nature. We fight differently when retreat isn't an option. We think differently. We act differently. Let me tell you about commitment. Real commitment isn't about having options. It's about eliminating them. When I invaded Egypt, I ordered our ships to return to France. My men looked at me like I was mad, but I knew something they didn't yet understand. Our greatest strength would come from having no choice but to succeed. Here's what most people get wrong about decisive action. They think it's about what you do. It's not. It's about what you eliminate. Every backup plan, every safety net, every escape route, these aren't insurance policies. They're anchors, holding you back from total commitment. Think about your own life right now. How many decisions are you approaching with one foot out the door? How many goals are you pursuing while keeping your options open? This divided focus isn't strategy. It's surrender in disguise. When I burned the bridges behind my army, I wasn't just cutting off retreat, I was focusing every man's mind on the single path forward. This is how you must approach your own challenges, not with multiple escape routes, but with singular, unwavering focus. Let me give you a framework I used before any major campaign. I would deliberately identify and eliminate backup plans, not because I was reckless, but because I understood that the presence of alternatives weakens resolve. Your mind will always be drawn to the easier path if you leave it open. Here's another truth about commitment. It's not about being fearless. It's about making fear irrelevant. When my soldiers knew they couldn't retreat, their fear of the enemy became secondary to their need to advance. This is the power of eliminating options. It transforms fear from a paralyzing force into fuel for action. Remember this, in the moment of decision, the presence of alternatives becomes your greatest weakness. When I faced the combined armies of Austria and Russia, my men fought with unmatched ferocity, not because they were braver, but because they knew victory was their only option. You must approach your own battles with this same mindset. Whether it's starting a business, changing careers, or pursuing any worthy goal, burn the bridges behind you. Make success your only option. Not because you're guaranteed to succeed, but because the absence of alternatives will call forth resources you never knew you had. Let me be very clear about something. This isn't about being reckless. It's about understanding that half measures produce half results. When you leave yourself an escape route, your mind will always be calculating retreat instead of focusing on advance. Think about the last time you fully committed to something. No backup plan, no safety net, no escape route. Remember how differently you thought, how differently you acted. That wasn't coincidence. That was the power of total commitment. This is how you must approach every significant decision in your life. Not with careful hedging and multiple backup plans, but with complete unwavering commitment. Because here's what I learned through countless battles. The moment you eliminate the possibility of retreat, you unlock capabilities you never knew you had. Remember, your backup plans aren't protecting you. They're limiting you, your safety. Nets aren't supporting you. They're holding you back. True power comes not from having options, but from eliminating them until success is your only choice. So look at your current challenges. What bridges do you need to burn? What backup plans are keeping you from total commitment? Because until you're willing to eliminate retreat as an option, you'll never know what you're truly capable of achieving. Let me tell you something crucial about decision-making that I learned through years of command. Whether you're deciding on marriage or money, career or conquest, every decision is a battlefield. And just like any battlefield, it demands strategy, sacrifice, and the understanding that there will be casualties, if only to your comfort. When I planned the Battle of Austerlitz, I approached it with the same strategic mindset I used when deciding to marry Josephine. This isn't about militarizing your life. It's about understanding that every significant decision carries the weight of consequence. Every choice has its terrain, its resources, and its opposing forces. Think about the decisions you're facing right now. Are you treating them with the same strategic respect you'd give to a military campaign? Because here's what I learned through countless victories and defeats. The moment you start treating your decisions as battles, you stop treating them as mere choices. Let me show you how to map any decision like a battlefield. First, identify your objective, not just what you want, but what victory truly looks like. When I pursued the crown of France, I wasn't just seeking power. I was seeking the ability to reshape a nation. Your objectives must be equally clear. Here's what most people get wrong about decision-making. They think it's about choosing between options. It's not. It's about maneuvering through opposition. Whether it's internal resistance, external obstacles, or competing interests, every significant decision faces opposition. Just like every battlefield has an enemy, when I made decisions that shaped empires, I always asked myself 3 questions. What are my resources? What are my obstacles? What price am I willing to pay for victory? These aren't just military considerations. They're the fundamental questions of any significant decision. Think about your last major decision. Did you map it like a battlefield? Did you identify your resources, recognize your opposition, understand the terrain of possibility? Because here's another truth from command. Battles aren't won by chance, and neither are life's great decisions. Let me give you a framework I used. Before any major decision, create your battlefield map. Your resources are your troops. Your options are your maneuvers. Your doubts and fears are the enemy's positions. Your timeline is your supply line. This isn't metaphor. This is strategy. Remember this. On every battlefield, whether it's made of earth or opportunity, there are moments when you must advance and moments when you must hold position. The key isn't constant action, it's strategic action. Sometimes the decision not to decide is itself a strategic choice. When I chose to divorce Josephine, it wasn't just a personal decision, it was a strategic battle. There were political considerations, emotional terrain, allies and opponents to consider. Every significant decision in your life carries the same complexity. Treat it with the same respect. Here's another truth about decision-making. Just like in battle, timing is everything. I didn't just choose what to do, I chose when to do it. Your decisions must carry the same strategic timing. The right choice at the wrong moment is still a defeat. Let me be very clear about something. Treating decisions as battles doesn't mean approaching them with aggression. It means approaching them with strategy, with respect for their complexity, with understanding of their consequences. Every battle has its cost, and every decision has its price. Think about the decisions waiting on your horizon. Are you approaching them with the strategic mind of a commander or the hesitation of a raw recruit? Because here's what separates great decision-makers from average ones. They understand that every decision is a campaign to be won or lost. Your life is full of battlefields disguised as choices. That career change you're considering, that's your Austerlitz. That relationship you need to either deepen or end, That's your Waterloo. Each deserves the same strategic respect, the same careful planning, the same committed execution. Remember, in battle, as in decision-making, hesitation kills more surely than wrong action. When I made decisions that changed history, it wasn't because I was always right. It was because I approached each decision with the full weight of strategic thinking. This is how you must approach your own decisions. Map them like battlefields, plan them like campaigns, execute them like a commander. Because in the end, every decision is a battle for your future, and every battle deserves your best strategy. Let me tell you about the true power of momentum. When I pursued the retreating Prussians after Jena, it wasn't just about movement. It was about maintaining an unstoppable force. Because here's what I learned through countless campaigns. Momentum isn't just about speed, it's about psychological dominance. Think about momentum in your own life right now. Are you building it, or are you letting it slip away? Because here's a truth I discovered. Momentum is like a cavalry charge. Once you lose it, regaining it costs 10 times the energy it would have taken to maintain it. When I conquered Prussia in 1806, it wasn't just through military might. It was through relentless momentum. While others would have stopped to consolidate their gains, I kept pushing forward because I understood something fundamental. Momentum creates its own opportunities. Let me show you how to build momentum, like a commander. First, you must understand that momentum begins in the mind. When my army moved with unstoppable force, it wasn't just physical speed, it was psychological certainty. Every victory, no matter how small, became fuel for the next advance. Here's what most people get wrong about momentum. They think it's about big wins. It's not. It's about constant forward motion. When I pursued my campaigns, I didn't wait for perfect victories. I created chains of continuous progress. Your path to any goal must follow the same principle. Think about your current projects, your ambitions, your daily battles. Are you moving forward every day, or are you waiting for the perfect moment to make a big leap? Because here's another truth from the battlefield. Momentum doesn't come from occasional bursts. It comes from relentless advance. When I launched my campaigns, I had a rule: never let the enemy rest. Not because I was cruel, but because I understood that momentum is a psychological weapon. The same principle applies to your goals. Every day you maintain momentum, you weaken the resistance, both internal and external. Let me give you a framework I used. After every victory, no matter how small, I immediately planned the next advance. Not because I was greedy, but because I understood that momentum must be fed. Your successes must work the same way, each one becoming a platform for the next advance. Remember this: momentum isn't just about moving forward, it's about moving forward with increasing force. When I drove through Europe, each victory made the next one easier, not because the battles were simpler, but because momentum had become our ally. Here's another crucial point about momentum. It affects both sides of any conflict. When you maintain momentum, you don't just strengthen your position, you weaken your opposition. Whether it's internal doubt or external obstacles, they crumble. In the face of relentless advance, let me be very clear about something. Momentum isn't about being reckless. It's about understanding that pauses should be tactical, not habitual. When I stopped during campaigns, it was to gather strength for the next advance, never to rest on success. Think about the last time you felt unstoppable. That wasn't just confidence, that was momentum. The question is, why did you let it slip away? Because here's what separates great achievers from average ones. They don't just create momentum, they maintain it. Your life right now is either building momentum or losing it. There's no middle ground. When I drove my armies across Europe, we were either advancing or preparing to advance. Your goals demand the same commitment to constant forward motion. Remember, momentum is more than movement. It's a force multiplier. Every step forward makes the next step easier. Every victory makes the next victory more likely, but only if you maintain the advance. This is how you must approach your own campaigns, whether they're professional, personal, or anything in between. Don't just move, build momentum. Don't just succeed. Use each success as fuel for the next advance. Because in the end, momentum isn't just about reaching your goals, it's about reaching them with such force that opposition becomes irrelevant. This is how you conquer your own empires, one relentless step at a time. Let me tell you about the power of silence. When I negotiated with Tsar Alexander at Tilsit, it wasn't my words that won the day, it was my silences. Because here's what I learned through years of command. True power often lies not in what you say, but in what you deliberately leave unsaid. Think about your own conversations right now. How often do you speak simply to fill the void? Because here's a truth I discovered. In the battle of words, silence is your heaviest artillery. Learn to deploy it with precision, and you'll find that others will rush to fill the void, often with exactly what you need to hear. When I held court at the Tuileries, I would often remain silent while others spoke, watching, listening, gathering intelligence through their desperate need to fill the silence. This isn't just about being quiet, it's about understanding that silence creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. Let me show you how to use silence as a strategic weapon. First, you must understand that silence isn't passive, it's an active force. When I would remain silent in council meetings, it wasn't because I had nothing to say. It was because I was letting others reveal their positions, their fears, their ambitions. Here's what most people get wrong about silence. They think it's a sign of weakness. It's not. It's a display of control. When I faced opponents across negotiating tables, my silence often did more to unsettle them than any threat could have. Your silence can carry the same power. Think about your last important negotiation or confrontation. How many opportunities did you miss because you couldn't bear the weight of silence? Because here's another truth from command. The one who breaks silence first is often the one who loses advantage. When I made decisions that shaped empires, I learned to use silence as a tool of power. Before major announcements, I would let anticipation build. Before important orders, I would let tension mount. Your silence can create the same commanding presence. Let me give you a framework I used. In any important interaction, I would consciously create 3 moments of silence. First, to observe, initial reactions. Second, to let pressure build. Third, to cement my position. This isn't manipulation, it's strategic communication. Remember this, silence isn't just about not speaking, it's about creating space for others to reveal themselves. When I held war councils, my silence often led generals to expose their true thoughts, their hidden doubts, their real motivations. Your silence can unveil the same truths. Here's another vital point about silence. It builds mystery, and mystery builds power. When others couldn't predict my thoughts or intentions, their imagination often did more work than my words ever could. Your measured silence can create the same aura of authority. Let me be very clear about something. Strategic silence isn't about being aloof or disconnected. It's about understanding that every word you don't say can be as powerful as those you do. When I negotiated treaties, my silences were as carefully chosen as my words. Think about the power dynamics in your life right now. Where are you speaking when you should be silent? Where are you filling voids that should be left empty? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that silence isn't the absence of power. It's one of its purest forms. Your silence is a weapon waiting to be wielded. Whether in negotiations, relationships, or leadership, the ability to remain silent while others rush to fill the void is a form of strength that few possess and even fewer master. Remember, in a world of constant noise, silence becomes a mark of distinction. When I commanded armies and ruled empires, my most powerful moments often came not from what I said, but from what I left unsaid. Master this art, and you'll find that silence speaks louder than words ever could. Let me tell you about the battle that noise wages against clarity. In my war council before Austerlitz, everyone had an opinion. Generals, advisors, diplomats, each voice adding to the cacophony of should and could. But here's what I learned. Through years of command, the ability to cut through noise is often more valuable than the ability to generate solutions. Think about the decisions facing you right now. How many voices are clamoring for your attention? Because here's a truth. I discovered in the moment of decision, too many voices create the same confusion as no voices at all. The key isn't to gather more opinions, it's to silence the ones that don't matter. When I planned the Egyptian campaign, I didn't seek consensus, I sought clarity. Every advisor had concerns, every diplomat had warnings, every general had reservations. But I understood something fundamental. The noise of collective worry often drowns out the signal of right action. Let me show you how to cut through noise like a commander. First, you must understand that not all input is equal. When I received counsel, I categorized voices into 3 groups: those who had proven wisdom, those who had relevant experience, and those who merely had opinions. Your decisions must pass through the same filter. Here's what most people get wrong about advice. They think more perspectives lead to better decisions. They don't. They lead to confusion disguised as consideration. When I made decisions that shaped empires, I listened to few, but listened deeply. Think about your last major decision. How many opinions did you gather? More importantly, how many did you actually need? Because here's another truth from command. The quality of counsel matters far more than the quantity. One clear voice is worth more than 100 muddled opinions. When I reformed France's legal code, I didn't try to please everyone. I focused on principles that would endure. Your decisions must follow the same path. Cut through the noise of temporary concerns to find the signal of lasting truth. Let me give you a framework I used. Before any major decision, I would identify the 3 people whose judgment I trusted most on that specific matter. Not the highest ranking, not the loudest, but the most proven in that particular domain. Your inner circle must be chosen with the same discrimination. Remember this, noise isn't just external. The most dangerous noise often comes from within. The doubts, the second-guessing, the needless complications we create in our own minds. When I made decisions that changed history, I had to silence my own internal noise first. Here's another crucial point about noise. It often disguises itself as prudence. Have you considered? What about? Shouldn't we? These questions can be valuable, but they can also be chains that bind you to inaction. Learn to recognize the difference. Let me be very clear about something. Cutting through noise isn't about being reckless or ignoring wisdom. It's about understanding that clarity comes from filtering, not accumulating. When I chose my course of action, it wasn't because I ignored counsel, it was because I knew which counsel mattered. Think about the voices you're listening to right now. How many are adding value? How many are adding volume? Because here's what separates great decision makers from average ones. They know how to create silence in the midst of chaos. Your life is full of noise, opinions, advice, warnings, suggestions. Some of it is valuable. Most of it isn't. When I commanded armies, I had to learn which voices carried wisdom and which just carried sound. Your path to any goal demands the same discrimination. Remember, in the battle between noise and clarity, clarity must win. Not because noise isn't important, but because decisions demand direction, not debate. When I chose my path, it wasn't because I had silenced all opposition. It was because I had silenced all irrelevant opposition. This is how you must approach your own decisions. Cut through the noise, filter the voices, find the signal in the static. Because in the end, the quality of your decisions will depend not on how much input you gather, but on how well you cut through the noise to find the truth. Let me tell you something about opposition that most people never understand. It's not an obstacle. It's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. When I reformed France's legal system, I didn't try to please everyone. I made enemies. But here's what I learned. The presence of opposition often validates the importance of your decisions. Think about the resistance you're facing right now. Are you trying to avoid it, or are you using it as confirmation that you're pushing boundaries that need to be pushed? Because here's a truth I discovered. If your decisions aren't making someone uncomfortable, they're probably not significant enough to matter. When I consolidated power in France, I didn't waste time making excuses for my ambitions. I understood something fundamental. Every meaningful action will face opposition. The question isn't how to avoid making enemies. It's how to ensure you're making the right ones. Let me show you how to handle opposition like a commander. First, you must understand that resistance isn't personal. It's structural. When I faced opposition from the old guard in France, it wasn't about me. It was about the change I represented. Your opposition faces you for the same reason. Here's what most people get wrong about resistance. They think it's something to be avoided. It's not. It's something to be expected and even welcomed. When I made decisions that transformed nations, I knew they would create enemies. That knowledge didn't deter me. It confirmed I was on the right path. Think about your last bold move. Did you back down because of opposition, or did you push forward despite it? Because here's another truth from command. The size of your impact can often be measured by the strength of the resistance you face. When I implemented the continental system, it made enemies across Europe. But I wasn't seeking approval. I was seeking impact. Your decisions must carry the same courage. Don't ask yourself who might oppose you. Ask yourself if the goal is worth the opposition. Let me give you a framework I used. For every major decision, I would identify 3 groups: those who would support it, those who would oppose it, and those who would wait to see who won. Your task isn't to convert the opposition, it's to move forward despite them. Remember this, opposition often reveals where change is most needed. When I faced resistance to my reforms, it usually pointed to the institutions that most desperately needed transformation. Your opposition can serve the same function, showing you exactly where to push harder. Here's another vital point about resistance. It tests your resolve. When I faced coalition after coalition against France, each one forced me to sharpen my strategy, strengthen my position, clarify my purpose. Your opposition can serve the same role if you let it strengthen rather than deter you. Let me be very clear about something. Making enemies isn't about being antagonistic. It's about being consequential. When I made decisions that shaped Europe, I didn't seek conflict, but I didn't shy from it either. Your impact must carry the same commitment. Think about the changes you want to make in your life, your career, your world. Are you holding back because you fear opposition? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that meaningful impact and universal approval rarely coexist. Your path to any significant goal will create resistance. That's not a warning. It's a promise. When I transformed France from a republic to an empire, every step faced opposition. But opposition doesn't mean you're wrong. Often, it means you're changing something that needs to be changed. Remember, in the battle between impact and approval, impact must win. Not because approval isn't valuable, but because real change demands disruption. When I chose my path, it wasn't because I enjoyed making enemies. It was because I valued transformation more than tranquility. This is how you must approach your own decisions. Make enemies, not excuses. Face opposition. Don't flee from it. Welcome resistance as a sign that you're pushing boundaries that need to be pushed. Because in the end, your impact will be measured not by who you pleased, but by what you changed. Let me tell you about the most precious resource on any battlefield: time. When I launched the Italian campaign, I didn't just move fast. I moved with the understanding that every hour spent in deliberation was an hour gifted to my enemies. Because here's what I learned through years of command. Time isn't just passing. It's being spent, whether you choose how to spend it or not. Think about the decisions you're postponing right now. How many opportunities are slipping away while you wait? Because here's a truth I discovered. Time is the only resource you can never replenish. You can recover from losses, rebuild from defeats, but you can never reclaim a wasted hour. When I planned my campaigns, I treated time like gunpowder, a finite resource that had to be used precisely and purposefully. This isn't just military strategy, it's life strategy. Every moment you spend in hesitation is a moment your competitors, your rivals, your enemies are using to advance. Let me show you how to use time like a commander. First, you must understand that time isn't neutral. It's either working for you or against you. When I moved against Austria in 1805, every day of delay would have given them time to strengthen their position. Your opportunities face the same erosion from time. Here's what most people get wrong about time management. They think it's about doing more things. It's not. It's about doing the right things at the right moment. When I made decisions that shaped empires, I wasn't just choosing what to do, I was choosing when to do it. Think about your current projects, your ambitions, your goals. Are you moving with urgency, or are you allowing time to slip away in the name of preparation? Because here's another truth from the battlefield. Perfect timing rarely exists, but timing itself is always perfect for something. When I crossed the Alps in winter, conventional wisdom said to wait for spring. But I understood something fundamental. Sometimes the worst time by normal standards is actually the perfect time for bold action. Your opportunities often wear the same disguise. Let me give you a framework I used. For every major decision, I would ask 3 questions. First, what happens if I act now? Second, what happens if I wait? Third, what opportunities might never come again? Your use of time must be guided by the same strategic thinking. Remember this, time doesn't just pass, it accumulates. Every moment you spend in inaction adds weight to the action when it finally comes. When I delayed confronting Britain at sea, that time strengthened their position while weakening mine. Your delays carry the same compound interest. Here's another crucial point about time. It reveals priorities. When I rebuilt France's institutions, I didn't have time for everything, so what I made time for showed what I truly valued. Your use of time sends the same unmistakable message about your real priorities. Let me be very clear about something. Respecting time isn't about rushing. It's about understanding the cost of delay. When I made decisions that changed history, it wasn't because I always moved quickly. It was because I understood when speed was more valuable than perfection. Think about the last opportunity you lost to time. Was it really unavoidable, or did you simply fail to recognize time's passage as a decision in itself? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that not deciding is still a decision, usually the worst one. Your time is being spent whether you choose to spend it or not. When I commanded armies, every hour was a resource to be invested, not a gift to be enjoyed. Your time demands the same conscious direction. Remember, in the battle between perfect timing and decisive action often wins, not because timing isn't important, but because the perfect moment rarely announces itself. When I chose to act, it wasn't because the moment was perfect. It was because waiting would only make it worse. This is how you must approach your own campaigns, whether they're professional, personal, or anything in between. Use time like the finite resource it is. Move with purpose, not just speed. Understand that every moment of delay carries a cost that compounds over time, because in the end, your legacy will be built not just on what you did, but on when you chose to do it. Time isn't just passing. It's judging your ability to recognize when action becomes imperative. Let me tell you about the most important lesson I learned at Waterloo. Not about victory, but about defeat. When the Imperial Guard finally broke, when the tide of battle turned irreversibly against us, I learned something profound about confidence. It's not about never failing. It's about how you carry yourself when everything falls apart. Think about your worst defeat, your darkest moment. How did you handle it? Because here's a truth I discovered. True confidence isn't revealed in victory, it's forged in defeat. At Waterloo, I lost more than a battle. I lost an empire. But I never lost my bearing as a commander. When the Allied armies finally broke our lines, I didn't collapse into despair. I understood something fundamental. Defeat is an event, not an identity. Your setbacks, your failures, your personal Waterloos, they don't define you unless you let them. Let me show you how to maintain confidence in chaos. First, you must understand that chaos isn't the enemy of confidence. It's the forge where confidence is tested and strengthened. When everything at Waterloo was falling apart, my demeanor remained unchanged. Not because I was in denial, but because I understood that confidence must be independent of circumstances. Here's what most people get wrong about confidence in crisis. They think it's about feeling good. It's not. It's about maintaining clarity and dignity even when everything is burning around you. When I faced defeat at Waterloo, my confidence wasn't in victory anymore. It was in my ability to face whatever came next. Think about your current challenges. Are they shaking your confidence, or are they revealing its true depth? Because here's another truth from the battlefield. Anyone can be confident when they're winning. Real confidence shows itself when you're standing in the ruins of your plans. When I was exiled to St. Helena, I didn't lose my sense of self. I understood something crucial. Confidence built on external success is fragile, but confidence built on internal strength is unshakable. Your confidence must come from who you are, not what you achieve. Let me give you a framework I used. In any crisis, focus on 3 things. First, what remains under my control? Second, what can I learn from this? Third, how can I maintain my dignity? Your confidence in chaos must be built on these same foundations. Remember this: chaos doesn't destroy confidence, it reveals its quality. When everything at Waterloo was falling apart, my officers watched how I handled defeat as closely as they had ever watched how I handled victory. Your response to chaos sends the same message to everyone around you. Here's another vital point about confidence in crisis. It's not about denying reality, it's about facing it without being diminished by it. When I knew Waterloo was lost, I didn't pretend otherwise. But I also didn't let that fact destroy my self-possession. Let me be very clear about something. Confidence in chaos isn't about being unaffected. It's about being undiminished. When I faced the greatest defeat of my life, I felt the full weight of it. But I never let it crush my spirit or my sense of who I was. Think about how you handle setbacks. Do they shatter your confidence, or do they reveal its true foundation? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that confidence tested by chaos becomes unshakable. Your life will have its own Waterloos. That's not a warning, it's a promise. When I lost everything I had built, I learned that true confidence isn't in never falling, it's in how you carry yourself on the way down. Remember, in the battle between circumstances and self-possession must win. Not because circumstances don't matter, but because your response to them matters more. When I faced defeat, it wasn't my victory that defined me. It was my bearing in defeat. This is how you must approach your own setbacks. Face them with dignity. Learn from them without being broken by them. Maintain your confidence, not because you're succeeding, but because you know who you are, regardless of success or failure. Because in the end, your greatest test of confidence won't come in your moments of victory. It will come in your personal Waterloos, when everything is falling apart and all eyes are on you to see how you handle it. Let me tell you about the art of delegation that won empires. When I commanded the Grande Armée, I didn't micromanage every battalion. I chose exceptional marshals and gave them clear objectives, because here's what I learned through years of command. True delegation isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about multiplying your impact. Think about how you delegate right now. Are you really extending your reach, or are you just trying to lighten your load? Because here's a truth I discovered: delegation isn't about doing less. It's about achieving more. When I conquered Europe, it wasn't through my actions alone, but through my ability to make others execute my vision. When I reorganized France's government, I didn't try to control every detail. I understood something fundamental. The strength of a leader isn't in doing everything personally. It's in creating a system where everything gets done according to your standards. Let me show you how to delegate like a commander. First, you must understand that delegation isn't surrender. It's strategy. When I chose my marshals, I wasn't giving away power. I was extending it. Your delegation must come from the same position of strength, not weakness. Here's what most people get wrong about delegation. They think it's about finding people to do what they don't want to do. It's not. It's about finding the right people to do what needs to be done. When I selected Davout, Masséna, and Ney as marshals, I chose them for their specific strengths. Think about your current responsibilities. Are you holding on to tasks because you don't trust others, or because you're truly the only one who can do them? Because here's another truth from command. If you can't delegate, you can't scale. And if you can't scale, you can't conquer. When I built my empire, I created a system of prefects and administrators who could execute my vision without constant oversight. Your sphere of influence must be built the same way, through trusted lieutenants who understand your intent and can act on it. Let me give you a framework I used. For every major responsibility, ask 3 questions. First, does this truly require my personal attention? Second, who could do this as well or better? Third, what clear objective can I give them? Your delegation must be guided by these strategic considerations. Remember this, delegation isn't about abdicating responsibility, it's about expanding capability. When I sent my marshals to different fronts, I remained ultimately responsible for their actions, but their successes multiplied my impact far beyond what I could achieve alone. Here's another crucial point about delegation. It's not just about tasks, it's about trust and development. When I gave command to my marshals, I wasn't just dividing work, I was developing leaders. Your delegation must serve the same dual purpose. Let me be very clear about something. Effective delegation isn't about becoming unnecessary. It's about becoming more powerful. When I commanded armies across multiple fronts, it wasn't because I had surrendered control. It was because I had mastered the art of extending it. Think about your potential for impact right now. How much of it is limited by your insistence on personal control? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that their greatest achievements will come through others. Your influence is either limited by your personal capacity or multiplied by your ability to delegate. When I conquered territories faster than any commander in history, it wasn't because I could be everywhere. It was because I had created a system that could execute my vision everywhere. Remember, in the battle between personal control and strategic impact must win, not because control isn't important, but because the greatest victories require more than one pair of hands. When I built my empire, it wasn't through doing everything myself. It was through making everything happen according to my vision. This is how you must approach your own command, whether it's over a team, a company, or just your own projects. Delegate from strength, not weakness. Choose your lieutenants carefully. Give clear objectives and trust in execution. Because in the end, your impact will be measured not by what you can do personally, but by what you can make happen through others. Master this, and you'll find that delegation isn't surrender. It's the ultimate expression of command. Let me tell you about the power of written commitment. When I drafted the Civil Code, every article was precisely worded, clearly stated, and officially documented. Because here's what I learned through years of command. A decision uncommitted to paper is like a law unproclaimed. It lacks the force of certainty. Think about your most important decisions right now. How many of them exist only in your mind? Because here's a truth I discovered. Writing down your decisions transforms them from intentions into commands. When I issued orders to my armies, they weren't casual suggestions. They were documented directives that demanded action. When I negotiated treaties with other nations, every term was meticulously recorded. I understood something fundamental. The act of writing transforms thought into commitment. Your decisions must carry the same weight of documentation. Let me show you how to document decisions like a commander. First, you must understand that writing isn't just record-keeping, it's commitment-making. When I drafted proclamations to my armies, every word was chosen to convert intention into action. Your written decisions must carry the same power. Here's what most people get wrong about documenting decisions. They think it's about remembering what they decided. It's not. It's about transforming a mental choice into a binding commitment. When I signed the Treaty of Tilsit, the very act of writing made the terms irrevocable. Think about your last major decision. Did you write it down with the same care you'd use to draft a treaty? Because here's another truth from command. The clarity of your writing reflects the clarity of your thinking. Vague documentation reveals vague commitment. When I established the Continental System, every detail was documented like a military order. Your decisions, whether personal or professional, demand the same level of written precision. A documented decision becomes a contract with yourself. Let me give you a framework I used. Every major decision should be written with 3 elements. First, the clear objective. Second, the specific actions required. Third, the timeline for execution. Your written decisions must contain these same elements of clarity and commitment. Remember this, writing isn't just about preserving decisions, it's about empowering them. When I issued the Berlin Decrees, the very act of putting them in writing gave them a force that mere verbal orders could never achieve. Your written decisions carry the same power of commitment. Here's another vital point about documentation. It creates accountability. When I wrote orders to my marshals, the written word became their mandate and their measure. Your documented decisions become the standard against which you judge your own actions. Let me be very clear about something. Writing your decisions isn't about bureaucracy, it's about authority. When I proclaimed laws for France, the written word transformed my intentions into institutions. Your written decisions must carry the same weight of finality. Think about the commitments you've made to yourself. How many of them exist only as thoughts or words? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that written commitment is the bridge between intention and action. Your decisions are either floating in your mind or anchored on paper. When I reformed France's institutions, every change began as a written decree. Your transformations must follow the same path, from thought to paper to reality. Remember, in the battle between memory and documentation, documentation must win. Not because memory isn't valuable, but because written commitment carries a power that memory alone can never match. When I changed nations, it wasn't through remembered intentions. It was through written declarations. This is how you must approach your own decisions. Write them with the care of a commander issuing orders. Document them with the precision of a diplomat drafting treaties. Commit them to paper with the finality of a ruler proclaiming law. Because in the end, your decisions will be judged not by what you intended to do, but by what you committed yourself to do, and nothing commits like the written word, carefully chosen and clearly stated. Let me tell you about the most dangerous people in any leader's circle, the ones who never disagree. When I chose my marshals, I didn't select men who would simply nod at my plans. I chose commanders who would challenge me when necessary. Because here's what I learned through years of command. Flattery is more dangerous than opposition. Think about your inner circle right now. How many of them dare to challenge your thinking? Because here's a truth I discovered. Comfort is the enemy of growth, and agreement is often the mask of mediocrity. When I held war councils, I needed flames that would forge better decisions, not mirrors that would merely reflect my own thoughts. When I rebuilt France's government, I deliberately sought out minds that would clash with mine. I understood something. Fundamental. The quality of your decisions is directly proportional to the quality of opposition they survive. Your inner circle must be a forge, not an echo chamber. Let me show you how to build a circle of advisors like a commander. First, you must understand that disagreement isn't disloyalty. It's dedication to truth. When Marshals Davout or Massena challenged my plans, they weren't undermining my authority. They were strengthening my decisions. Here's what most people get wrong about surrounding themselves with others. They think harmony means agreement. It doesn't. True harmony in leadership comes from the productive tension of different perspectives. When I chose my Council of State, I didn't want peace. I wanted progress. Think about your last major decision. How many genuine challenges did it face before you made it? Because here's another truth from command. Ideas that face no opposition often hide fatal flaws. Your thinking must be tested by fire, not cushioned by comfort. When I reformed France's institutions, I sought out minds that would stress test every proposal. Your decisions, whether personal or professional, must face the same rigorous challenge. Better to find flaws in the council chamber than on the battlefield. Let me give you a framework I used. For every major decision, I would seek 3 types of opposition. First, the strategic challenger. Second, the practical skeptic. Third, the experienced veteran. Your decisions must be forged in the same fires. Of diverse opposition, remember this: surrounding yourself with fire isn't about creating conflict. It's about creating strength. When I debated with my marshals, every challenge that didn't break my plan made it stronger. Your ideas must be tempered by the same heat of honest opposition. Here's another crucial point about building your circle. The most valuable advisors aren't the ones who share your views, they're the ones who share your standards while challenging your thoughts. When I chose my generals, I didn't want agreement. I wanted excellence. Let me be very clear about something. Seeking challenge isn't about creating discord, it's about pursuing truth. When I made decisions that shaped empires, it wasn't because everyone agreed with me, it was because my plans had survived every honest challenge. Think about the voices you listen to. How many of them truly test your thinking? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that growth comes from challenge, not comfort. Your circle of advisors will either sharpen you or soften you. When I built my command structure, every position was filled with someone who could contribute unique perspective and genuine challenge. Your inner circle must serve the same purpose, not to comfort, but to strengthen. Remember, in the battle, between flattery and honest opposition must win. Not because it's more pleasant, but because it's more valuable. When I chose my advisors, it wasn't because they made me feel good, it was because they made me think better. This is how you must build your own circle. Seek out those who will challenge you, embrace those who will question you, value those who will make you defend your thinking. Because in the end, your decisions will be judged not by how easily they were made, but by how well they were tested. Because the true measure of your inner circle isn't how well they support you, it's how much they strengthen you. And strength comes only through the fire of genuine challenge, never through the false peace of constant agreement. Let me tell you about the hardest decision any commander faces, knowing when to advance and when to withdraw. When I retreated from Moscow in 1812, it wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. Because here's what I learned through years of command. True strength lies not just in knowing when to charge, but in knowing when to change course. Think about the positions you're holding right now. How many of them are you maintaining out of wisdom, and how many out of pride? Because here's a truth I discovered. Sometimes the boldest decision isn't to advance, it's to retreat strategically. When I pulled back from Moscow, it wasn't because I feared battle. It was because I understood timing. When I faced overwhelming forces at Leipzig, I made the decision to withdraw. I understood something fundamental. Retreat isn't always about avoiding defeat. Sometimes it's about preserving strength for future victories. Your challenges demand the same strategic wisdom. Let me show you how to master the timing of advance and retreat. First, you must understand that neither action carries inherent virtue. Their value lies in their timing. When I chose to attack at Austerlitz, it wasn't because attack was inherently better, it was because the moment demanded it. Here's what most people get wrong about strategic decisions. They think consistency means never changing course. It doesn't. True consistency lies in consistently making the right decision for the moment, whether that means advance or retreat. When I led armies, each choice was dictated by circumstance, not pride. Think about your current battles. Are you advancing because it's wise, or because you're afraid to be seen retreating? Because here's another truth from command. More leaders are destroyed by their pride than by their enemies. Your strategy must be guided by wisdom, not ego. When I conducted the Italian campaign, I would sometimes retreat to draw enemies into unfavorable positions. Your setbacks can serve the same strategic purpose, but only if you recognize them as opportunities rather than failures. Let me give you a framework I used. Before any major decision to advance or retreat, I would consider 3 factors. First, the strength of my position. Second, the resources at my disposal. Third, the cost of maintaining course versus changing it. Your decisions must be weighed against the same strategic measures. Remember this, sometimes the boldest charge is knowing when to pull back. When I withdrew from Spain, it wasn't lack of courage, it was strategic necessity. Your retreats must carry the same strategic wisdom, free from the burden of pride or appearance. Here's another vital point about timing. There are moments when you must charge blindly forward, betting everything on one decisive push. When I crossed the bridge at Arcole, it was all or nothing. Your life will present the same moments, when half measures are more dangerous than total commitment. Let me be very clear about something. The decision to advance or retreat isn't about courage, it's about calculation. When I made choices that determined the fate of armies, it wasn't based on bravery or fear. It was based on clear-eyed assessment of reality. Think about the positions you're defending right now. How many of them are worth the resources they're consuming? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They understand that not every position is worth holding, and not every battle is worth fighting. Your success depends not just on knowing how to advance, but on knowing when to do so. When I launched my campaigns, timing was often more crucial than force. Your own advances and retreats must be guided by the same strategic timing. Remember, in the battle between pride and strategy, strategy must win. Not because pride isn't valuable, but because strategic wisdom preserves your ability to fight another day. When I chose to retreat from Russia, it wasn't because the challenge was too great. It was because the timing was wrong. This is how you must approach your own battles. Know when to charge forward with everything you have. Know when to pull back and preserve your strength. Because in the end, victory often goes not to the one who never retreats, but to the one who knows when to advance and when to withdraw. Let me tell you something crucial about power that I learned long before I wore a crown. Every person is already the emperor of their own domain. Whether it's your time, your skills, your relationships, or your decisions, there is a realm where you already hold absolute authority. The question isn't whether you have power, it's whether you're wielding it with imperial confidence. Think about your sphere of influence right now. What territories do you already command? Because here's a truth I discovered. Before I ruled France, I ruled myself. Before I commanded armies, I commanded my own choices. Your empire begins with the same fundamental authority. When I rose from a minor Corsican officer to Emperor of France, I understood something fundamental. Every great reign begins with mastering your current domain, no matter how small it seems. Your path to larger authority starts with how you rule. your present kingdom. Let me show you how to think like an emperor in your own sphere. First, you must understand that power isn't given, it's claimed. When I took command in Italy, I didn't wait for permission to lead. I demonstrated leadership through decisive action. Your authority in your domain demands the same bold assertion. Here's what most people get wrong about power. They think it's about controlling others. It's not. It's about mastering yourself and your immediate sphere of influence. When I reformed France, it started with reforming myself. Your empire must be built on the same foundation. Think about the decisions you make every day. Each one is an imperial decree in your own life. Are you ruling with the confidence of an emperor or the hesitation of a subject? Because here's another truth from command. Authority begins with how you govern your own choices. When I built my empire, it started with building myself. Your domain, whether it's your career, your relationships, your personal development, demands the same imperial attention to detail and decisive action. Let me give you a framework I used. In any position of authority, focus on 3 elements. First, what you can directly control. Second, what you can strongly influence. Third, what you can strategically shape. Your power grows when you master each level of influence. Remember this, every emperor starts somewhere. When I commanded my first artillery battery, I treated that small unit with the same strategic focus I would later use to command armies. Your current position deserves the same imperial dedication. Here's another crucial point about personal power. It expands through demonstration, not declaration. When I took control of France, it wasn't through claiming authority. It was through displaying the capacity to handle it. Your influence grows the same way. Let me be very clear about something. Being the emperor of your domain isn't about grandiosity. It's about responsibility. When I ruled France, every decision carried weight. Your decisions in your sphere carry the same significance. Think about how you're ruling your current realm. Are you governing with confidence and vision, or are you waiting for someone to grant you authority? Because here's what separates great leaders from average ones. They don't wait for power. They exercise the power they already have. Your life is an empire waiting to be ruled effectively. When I transformed France, it began with transforming how I approached my own authority. Your domain, no matter its current size, demands the same imperial mindset. Remember, in the battle between waiting for power and wielding the power you have, action must win. Not because bigger opportunities won't come, but because how you rule your current domain determines whether you'll be ready for them when they do. This is how you must approach your own empire. Rule your current realm with confidence and vision. Make decisions with imperial authority. Take command of your sphere of influence. Because in the end, the question isn't whether you'll become an emperor, you already are one. The only question is, how will you rule?